told you I wasn't going to go easy on you.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you didn't miss us too much. I know we were absent on Sunday, so welcome back to the show. This is Get the Mic. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
And as usual, we are dissecting Dragon Ball today. As we do every day on Get the Mic, we're dissecting fiction to find its true meaning.
True.
Now, it's interesting because this episode we're covering today is kind of an addendum to the last arc. It's interesting where to put it. What would you say about it?
There's a lot
before
of
we get into it?
microcosms in the show, right?
Yeah.
And I would say this episode kind of functions like a microcosm of the ideas, so we can kind of establish Goku's power.
Do you also want to mention that it is technically an anime filler episode?
Oh yeah, this is one that people would say is just a filler episode for sure. We'll see if it's just filler.
I don't think it is. I'll go ahead and say that right now.
I don't know. So far, I mean, some of these filler episodes. Ugh.
So far, we haven't had, there's no Super Saiyan, so it's not really Dragon Ball, right?
Yeah, we got to get through this.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started, I suppose.
Yeah.
The first thing that we see here is the Dragon crew getting ready to depart, just like they did last season. So they're saying their goodbyes to everyone, deciding what everyone's going to do, and letting everyone know what they're going to do. This is just really some background for the episode here. So, Roshi asks... No, sorry, not Roshi. The boys ask Roshi if they can stay with him and continue to train. And what does Roshi say?
He says, "No, there's nothing more I can teach you. You need to learn from the world."
Right, and so what happens is that the boys, they kind of agree with this, right? They kind of go along with it.
Well, Krillin, not as much.
Well, I was going to say, in their direct response, I think they say something like, Roshi says something like, if anyone knows how to do it, it's you boys, right? And they're like, yeah, cool with it.
Yeah. Well, it's the tone of the two scenes between the English and the Japanese is very different, too. It's played really funny, and everyone's kind of like acting a little bit like shocked, and Goku's doing the same old, just like, what does this mean? And he's kind of like, it's really hammed up in the English, but in the original translation, you can see it here on the screen. For instance, this suitcase that we're seeing, that suitcase, they like make a gag out of there being a bunch of magazines in there in the English version, whereas in the Japanese version, Goku just says, "Oh, are these my things?" And then Roshi's like, "Yes, I put them in there for you. Like, I planned for you to have to go out."
More, I think it's a little more of a somber tone in the Japanese, right?
Yeah.
Like, it really is. Just kicked all our viewers out for some reason. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with the stream. But, like I was saying, it is kind of more of a somber tone. They don't want to go, and we're going to get into what Goku's going to do, but I don't know. Maybe somber is not the right word, but there's a different tone for sure. And I think too, the Roshi flashback, let's say, or like the Roshi fantasy,
the cutaway,
let's say, is really funny.
Well, also, Oolong and Poor's reaction to Goku is the opposite, too. It's all totally different.
Let's continue, though. I want to finish explaining it, then we can get into talking about it. So, the boys are pretty receptive to, going and branching off on their own way. Except Goku is saying that, and that's the impetus for Goku leaving, is that he goes and says, okay, well, if I'm not going to be able to train with Roshi, I'm going to go get my grandfather's Dragon Ball, right? It's been a year, so he's ready to go get it. And Krillin wants to stay with Master Roshi. Meanwhile, Bulma and Yamcha are going to head back to the city. And it covers pretty much everyone, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is interesting how they react to Goku going after the Dragon Balls. They don't think he can really do it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that plays
do.
A little bit differently.
It's weird.
They're I think it's in the English they're more encouraging, whereas in the Japanese, or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe in the English they're discouraging towards them, but in the Japanese they're very much like,
well, it's not.
We don't want to go, instead of telling him not to go.
Yes, That's what
Yeah.
I was gonna say. It's not so much discouraging him, or maybe thinking he can't do it is the wrong way to put it.
Hmm.
But it's more of like, why does this keep changing? Sorry, I should not even look at this. Let me go ahead and minimize that. All right, so it it isn't so much discouraging him, but they're like, even Krillin asks Oolong if it's gonna be tough to get the Dragon Balls, to collect the
Hmm.
Dragon Balls. He's like, yeah, it's gonna
Like,
be
definitely.
quite tough, right? And so they're saying, oh, you're gonna go do it alone, Goku. Good luck, all this.
Hmm.
Um, and so Goku says goodbye to his friends and calls the Way, the Tao, the Keen Tone back, and he is now going to go out and confront Chaos to find his father, his grandfather, that is.
He's going to search out the memory of his grandfather.
And so now I think we can talk about, let's say, what Krillin's staying is, what the going back to the city is, all that stuff.
Sure. So Krillin being sort of attached to Master Roshi here is, I think, kind of telling. With what we've talked about Krillin being as this more egoistic spirit. And I was curious what you thought about this idea that, I'm actually just kind of approaching these ideas, coming back through it, because I'd only ever seen it once before. So what do you think about the idea that, like, that now Krillin, instead of doing the same thing that Goku's doing, and saying, I'm going to go out on that way, right? Because he can't ride the Kinto, right? Do you think it's a recognition that his spirit is not good enough and that he needs to be more like Goku before he could try to do something like that?
Yeah, in a way, he actually does say, and I don't think it's because he needs to be more like Goku. Because I think Krillin starts to grow especially after this last season. He kind of starts to grow, on his own, like kind of
Mm-hmm.
aside from Goku, and so, um, he says to Master Roshi, because Master Roshi tries to convince him so that Master Roshi can be with Launch, right? And it is that, let's say, that unholy spirit that grips Roshi at the time, that has him fantasize about Launch and all that, not wanting Krillin around,
Mm-hmm.
etc. But after Roshi tries to convince him, Krillin says, "No, I'm too inexperienced to go it alone."
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, and it is a, and there it is. I'm still very
Yeah.
inexperienced. It is a very first preliminary step, let's say, to get to wisdom, to admit that you don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's the same thing here, because imagine, and this is great because it really caps off, and I know it's a filler episode, but it really caps off Krillin's journey, right? Because he gets to Roshi's island thinking he has experience and thinking he says he could make the Olympics if he wanted to, like all this stuff.
He's bragging about his journey out.
And now what does he say?
Now he says, I'm not experienced enough
So
to go it.
he's humbling
that way.
himself
Yeah.
there, and by doing so, I think he is following the path that he needs to follow. It's not so much like, oh, Krillin's just more mature than Goku, so he needs to stay coddled with Master Roshi, right? The other thing is, Krillin still needs Launch.
Mm.
Something we haven't really talked about.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Launch in a while. Why do you say that Krillin still needs Launch?
Krillin still needs Launch because he doesn't have the forthrightness to deal with women in the same way that Goku does. And we see he kind of adopts some of the same blindnesses that Roshi has, inadvertently, right? But he still needs Launch. And I think one of the issues is that his childhood, and we'll get there eventually, but his childhood kind of gets messed up a little bit. And so we don't see him with Launch as much. But I think that's another reason why he subconsciously wants to go back.
Yeah, and I think the connection between Roshi and Krillin is there as well. Because it's this.
Oh, definitely.
With Krillin arriving at the point in time when Goku, he goes into his tutelage, right? Then Krillin comes flying in, and it's like we had talked before about how Krillin is like a mini Roshi for Goku in a way. It's sort of like an ego construct in that sense that he's like, oh, it's a projected like image of a reflection of myself, like Roshi, right? And so I think they both need launch for a similar reason, but from a different polarity sort of thinking, right? It's like Krillin's immaturity and his need for what she represents on one plane, whereas it's Roshi's
Well, I mean,
insufficiency that makes him need her as well.
what is launch, right? What is launch to the boys? She's that mother figure, the good but benevolent chaos from which forth springs opportunity, right? And that's kind of what Krillin is still unable to tackle the entirety of it, but he can tackle it in small doses with launch, and so that's kind of, I think, what he's aiming at. And it's not just about, let's say, fighting, but strengthening his spirit overall. And so he does go back with Roshi.
Yeah, and I think it's important too because there's an interplay there. Like it's necessary for Roshi to have Krillin there. You know, he needs to be doing what he needs to be living up to the Synex or the Roshi archetype, right? He needs to be in the process of being a Roshi and not just being consumed by, you know, his shadow.
Well,
his
the other
Puer
thing
spirit,
is
right?
he doesn't get to have launch and not train the boys.
Yeah, it's they go hand in hand. Like it's sort of a linking, right?
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's what we see. And the groups depart in their separate ways. Roshi and Krillin go off to like the surrounding city. Roshi, I'm sorry, not Roshi. Yamcha and Bluma go off to the city, and Goku goes to find his grandfather's Dragon Ball. So the next thing we see is what transpires next from those three plot threads, and we have one here with Roshi and Krillin. I'm glad it brought it up first because it's kind of the next thing that happens. Roshi and Krillin go to the city, and Roshi is trying to get a saleswoman to try on panties in front of him.
Yep. In an incredibly lecherous way. He's saying, "Oh, you're the same age as my what does he say?
Daughter, my granddaughter, yeah.
Daughter or granddaughter or something or niece."
Yeah, ask her how old she is. It's really weird, yeah.
This is some high level Roshi creeping.
And look, he's looking at him right there. He's got like paper in his nose already because it's all bleeding.
Yeah, he's already thought this out.
But to say this, right? Roshi has been in deception for so long that right now he really has to express part of his true self, right? But he's been so consumed with being Jackie Chun that he really hasn't had the opportunity to do much of this. After all, Ran Fan got out in the first round.
Yeah, this is him cutting loose, and you can see whenever he gets slapped in the face in this scene, he's just grinning.
He doesn't care, yeah.
You know, you don't get the same sort of slapstick Roshi's just like knocked out. He just like pops back into frame smiling ear to ear with a big hand mark on his face, and it's like, you know.
And it's also interesting, too, because the first thing, and what we were talking about, Krillin will gain from Roshi, right? The first thing we see is this, let's say, pathology of sexuality. And Krillin's right in the thick of it. He watches all of this transpire, basically.
Right. Well, this is him going back under Roshi's teaching, right?
Yes.
Because Roshi is he's doing a performative lesson as well, right? We're kind of playing back out that idea that happened with Bulma originally, which is that temptation, and he's showing like the dynamic of it, right? And like we had said before, this episode is going to be sort of a microcosm of the things we've talked about, and this is a good example of that.
Yeah. We also see Yamcha and the crew. They have lost their capsules again. I wonder how Bluma did it this time. She even admits it. Even beautiful women make mistakes. Just even that phrase, we can already assume like.
And it's in the desert.
And it's in the desert again.
Again.
It's like get with it. Well, I mean, think about what Bluma did during the tournament. Let's say, right, like getting Oolong to give her a boost, that kind of stuff, right? We can kind of see the through line on that and how we see Bluma hasn't changed. She's repeating her same issues.
Yeah.
And so they get lost in the desert again, those two who have obviously separated their egos into, or not even egos, their
They're just disintegrated.
They're disintegrated, and their disintegrated halves are with them in that point. So, that's Yamcha and Bluma, and then we see Goku, who has found the first Dragon Ball,
Mm-hmm.
or so he thinks. So, he goes that way. Then we get to see Nam, and Nam comes back to his village. He's got tons of water, but it's only temporary because the river that they have next to them is not going to. It doesn't flow, and it hasn't flowed for a long. Flowed, is that right?
Yeah.
And it hasn't flowed for a long time. So the old wise man tells Namu about the magical lake, which roams about, and they're able to get water from it. Then I believe, yeah, Nam decides to go off and search for it. Now there's a couple interesting things here. First off, Nam specifically thanks Master Roshi, and really it's interesting because Master Roshi just facilitated that, right? But that facilitation, let's say that opportunity provided by Master Roshi, I really think is what is praised by Nam here.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nam is thanking Roshi for the opportunity to have the time to fix this problem. You know, it's like, you can sometimes you can lean on the spirit of your father. You can lean on your father for things, right? It's like,
definitely.
It's like my father can't be the endless spring, right? Constantly giving me what I need, but he can provide you with like, oh, here's something to essentially sustain you while you find the way to sustain yourself.
Yes. And so that's what is provided. And he thanks Roshi for that. And the other important thing I wanted to note about this, and I'm curious on what you think about it, is the old wise man of the village tells Nam that he seems to be nothing but a burden to him these days.
I think that it could be that the wisdom of this old man has not been heeded. If he feels like he's a burden to the village, right, his wisdom is not being integrated, and that could be part of why they're, you could say, in a state of lacking spiritual sustenance.
Interesting. Because I was thinking it's more of how society, when, let's say, aged and
Oleg had to join in.
So, like I was saying, society when it's aged and needs a lot of repair, right? It's going to seem that way to those who try to care for it, right? And Nam doesn't even answer. He doesn't say that, yes, you're being a burden or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not so sure that it's his wisdom that they're lacking because, he's the one that sent Nam to go find the water, and that whole creating order out of chaos from the journey that Nam has done and performed on the behest of this old man. I think that actually is the wisdom being followed.
Well, that's the thing, right? I'm just talking about the circumstances that lead up to the hero having the opportunity to save the village with the wisdom of the elders, right? And so it's like it's a sort of symbolic of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
In less of a literal sense.
And so Nam goes off to find some water. Meanwhile, Goku finds a bunch of water.
Finds it immediately. It was just out there.
It's almost like he was on the way to it. And so he finds it. Nam's searching in the desert for it. He's following the river up and he encounters one of these. Another one of these, boys.
This exact thing from the first episode of the show.
Yeah, it's almost like the same thing. Same frames of animation and everything. Who knows? So Nam gets captured and Goku finds out. We kind of set up our next thing after the break where Goku's going to come and rescue Nam. Now, I think it's significant, a couple things here as well. So, I think it's significant that the attack from heaven fails. Why would the attack from heaven fail?
The spirit that this is very dragon-like, right? This creature represents. I don't think you can attack with the nobility of your struggle. Let's say it doesn't care. Chaos doesn't care.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I was gonna say beasts can't understand the suffering of men.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And this
so-
is a purely chaotic being, right? This is a that chaotic beast that is just it. No church in the wild, right?
Yeah, exactly. Nature's red in tooth and claw.
Mhm.
Perfect. And the other thing I wanted to mention was Goku finding the water. So let's say serendipitously, because as we know, what'll happen in the end of the episode, right?
Right. I think that in creating order out of chaos, this is something that the way leads Goku to, so that he can do that. It's sort of like along his way, he's finding the things that he needs to set in order.
Well, it's also interesting. He's finding the pieces. I see what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's also interesting. The water's like sparkling. It's really clear. It's almost like a clairvoyant thing. I think, right? It's like
It's miraculous.
This is the answer. This is the light. Let's say in this
It's
area.
shimmering, right?
Yeah.
Very bright.
And so Nam gets carried away by the dragon. Let's just call it a dragon.
It's basically a dragon.
And Goku has to go save him. Meanwhile, we do see the rest of the dragon crew. They're still out in the desert, taunting each other, trolling each other, trying to stay cool, trying to survive.
Just in the exact same situation that they were in at the beginning of their journey.
Yes. And it's mostly Blooma's fault.
Again.
But even beautiful women make mistakes, so Oolong transform into an umbrella. That's what you got to do.
What do you think it means for Bulma to be shading herself with Oolong here in the desert?
Well,
The same thing that it meant before,
I
right?
think similarly, yeah, but definitely the loss of capsules yet again is very stark, right?
Mhm.
I don't think it happens again after this.
I don't recall it happening again.
And I there's a specific reason why.
I think I know why as well. I think to me, it's because they're experiencing it on their own without Goku.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I think that's part of it,
But we'll have to talk about it. But yeah, I think this is the last time she loses the capsules, and she does so by what she did at the tournament, right? Where she had, let's say, little regard for Oolong, among other things.
Mm-hmm.
Hitting him, hugging him, and then hitting him. Basically just hitting him the whole time.
Just abusing him throughout the whole arc.
Standing on him, all that. Yeah, exactly. So she just like last time that she was abusing Oolong, has lost her privilege, and so she's gonna have to get back on her own. Now, I don't wanna Oh, that's funny. It's funny Oolong says he doesn't want to. And so Goku, meanwhile, goes after Nam and is able to kill this dragon in the same way he did before.
Yep.
He uses the Noibo to extend, and using the strength of his ancestry and heritage is able to destroy the dragon easily, right? It's the strength of his ancestry that can do that. After all, they've tamed the wilds in ages past. So,
Mm-hmm. This is, and in a sense, it's an interesting thing that we get to see this for Namu's character, where you can see he's having to be the damsel in distress in this situation. Like it's a humbling experience for him, and you can see that even though he's a good character, he's even so good that he can ride on the Nimbus, right? He's still, it's like part of his process is that he's being humbled in the face of Goku and his way, right? And so the first thing that he has to run into whenever he goes out on his journey to confront chaos, let's say, right, is exactly that he needs to be like Goku and rely on the strength of your ancestry to confront that chaotic nature of the unknown. Same thing that Bulma had to learn immediately upon really interacting with Goku like that.
And Goku here also feels up Nam to see if he's a boy or a girl.
Which is funny. It's almost like Toriyama is being self-aware because the immediately after he does this, he feels him up to see if he's a man. Because it's like the last time we saw this play out, it was with a literal damsel in distress, right?
Right, exactly.
And he says it's because a man hasn't ridden on the Kinton, right? But I think it's also kind of funny in that sense.
But right, and he's humbled by it. And so we see Goku rescue him, and Goku's forthrightness is truth. All of that good stuff in his ancestry comes together to defeat the dragon. And then we see the real source of the river's blockage, let's say. It's this whole species of dragon monster of monsters.
I was about to say the same thing. The
Girin.
monsters of monsters, right?
And they live on top of a mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like Olympus, right? It's like living on top of the mountain, ruling over monsters. It's interesting to say the least. And so they've dammed up.
And look at the mushrooms, by the way. Like all around this whole area at the top of the mountain, it's just mushrooms all over the place as they come up to it, you know?
Definitely. And so how does this make any sense? The string keeps dropping everything. I don't know what's going on.
Looks good over here.
Good.
It's just lying about how many people are watching.
Yeah, it's fluctuating pretty hard. Yeah, here are the mushrooms we were talking about. So they've dammed up the place, and so Nam and Goku are going to try and convince them to break the dam.
So Nam tries first, and they're not impressed. And he sort of prostrates himself and clings onto one of their legs, and they try to kick him off.
It's funny that he does exactly as he did against the last dragon, right? He doesn't change his mode of being to fight this enemy.
Yeah, he tries to reason with them and say, look, this is the nobility of my cause. Stop stopping me, right? That's all he's got.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they won't listen to. And so Goku shows them what they want to see, which is strength.
Mm-hmm. And then when he does, that calls forth the king of the monster of monsters in this situation, right? Their leader.
Which we know.
Or the master of monster
right?
of monsters.
We saw him at the tournament. His name is Girin, right? He uses the merry-go-round gum to make the dam. I don't know if has happened yet, but right. And so he's the leader of the monsters, and Goku comes out, and it's to say too, because Girin tells them to stop. It's to say that even the monster of monsters respects the spirit of the hero, right?
Well, he tells them you're not fit to fight him.
Yeah.
You're not on the same level at all.
Exactly.
And he shows respect for Goku, and Goku asks him, he says, do you mind if we blow up the dam? Which I really like that he's like, oh, okay, we're cool. Like, he's not coming in and saying, even though he's a monster, right? He's not coming in and saying, like, you did this thing and I'm going to destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
He is still forthrightly confronting that chaos, right? He's coming straight to him and saying, okay, can I do this thing? Like, do you have a problem with it? Showing that level of respect, because also he showed Goku that respect.
Right, exactly. And so I think the only hiccup they find is that it's made of the merry-go-round gum, right? So they can't open it. It won't budge. Don't think badly of us, is what Girin says. Like, we can't undo it.
It's almost like we did this bad thing before, and now we know who you are. And it's like, he's almost shamed by it. He's like, don't think badly of us that we can't undo what was bad, right?
Or that we were...
It's like just by encountering Goku, they can recognize that.
Right, and to think about like what the merry-go-round gum is, right? It's that petrification of predators, right? It's that inability to move, and so you can confront that, right, with truth, and that's what Goku has to do here. It's the only thing that's going to break this wall of chaos, let's say, right?
To break the levee, right?
Yeah, and so Goku has his, as you said earlier, his Fire Mountain moment, right?
Yeah, this is a, and it's on a mountain. It's another one of those little microcosms, but I think it's important that we get to see Goku have this experience because we're seeing that Roshi told him at the beginning of this episode, "Oh, I've taught you everything I can teach you." And so we're seeing him do the exact same thing that is the most impressive thing that we've seen Roshi do, really. That here's this mountain-like or celestial obstacle, and I'm going to attack it with truth and completely obliterate it.
Right. And it's because Goku can recognize the truth that power has no weight against his spirit, right? His spirit is concentrated energy, is easily able to overcome that paltry, let's say, lizard brain reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the merry-go-round gum is blown up, the dam is blown up, and Goku allows the river to flow again.
I do like that we see Goku's muscles bulge and his vein
It's the
pop out a
first
little
time,
bit when he
right?
does
We've seen him develop quite a bit in the past, and I think too. I wanted to touch on what you were saying about where he is now. This shows us that Goku is far enough along, right, to go out on his own, and we'll see him confront new tiers of enemies and new hierarchies, right? He's ready to receive all that. He's open to the world, and he's still young enough to not be blind like Roshi, in what Roshi did to the mountain, right? He doesn't just destroy like everything, including the monsters or anything like that, right?
Right. If this was Roshi in the situation, he would just destroy the mountain.
The
as
mountain
he
would
always
just be
does.
gone, right?
But the ability for Goku to see, I think that we're seeing that play out here because he's showing them that respect, right? He can see them as agents, like not just as chaos to be destroyed, right? Whereas the blindness from the shades to Roshi makes it so that Fire Mountain is just fire. Fire Mountain
to
is
be
just
destroyed,
chaos.
right? Exactly.
So yeah, and showing Goku flex like that, showing his muscle bulge the same way that like Roshi does whenever he uses this type of Kamehameha.
It's just a little
It's great.
microcosm.
It's
just a
great.
little microcosm of Goku's growth, exactly. And so then the oh, this is back at the Dragon Crew, but
It goes back and forth throughout this
it does
episode
go
quite
back
a
and
bit.
forth. But right then it goes back to the village, and do they have water? They don't have water, right?
Oh, they have water for about a second.
Yeah.
Like we get a very short clip of them celebrating that, oh, we finally have water again, and immediately after that a dust storm blows in.
Exactly. And so then their problem is still there. And so what do you think it is that that whole adventure was kind of?
What do you mean?
So them going to the monster of monsters and breaking that chaos, right, isn't what solved the issue.
See, this is the one part of the episode that I don't have much of an analysis for. I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue, so I'm curious to hear what you have to say on it. Because it's the reason that they get blown back to the tournament, but I can't articulate it.
Oh no, also that they get blown back. You're saying it's the same.
It's the same reason.
Right. So, in what I've been saying, or what I've been thinking about it, is the water is that spiritual nourishment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the people, right there, and in Nam's village, they're also emaciated, right? Looks like they're malnourished. And so we could say they're spiritually malnourished, right? And that spiritual going out, destroying a dragon and bringing back the rewards, we already saw that happen with Nam. That doesn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
The gold that you bring back from a fight with a dragon cannot last forever. Problems have to be solved on their own, right? That, like this problem, for example, which is a lack of...
Well, there's two solutions to the problem in this episode, right? There's Nam's solution, which plays out in its microcosm, right? And then there's Goku's solution, which brings them a miracle, right? It makes it miraculous whenever he resolves it for them. And so you have a transcendent element there.
Well, right. The next thing, the dust storm happens, and they think they're out of water, and then Goku shows them the oasis that he found earlier in the episode.
Right. Well,
just to clarify.
Yeah. So the whole wandering lake finally ties itself back in because it's interesting to me because it's like it's showing the difference in what Goku can achieve now versus what Namu could achieve. It's like an earthly and a heavenly solution.
Yeah, and it shows how far Goku's grown even from the battle he had with Nam, right? And so it is exactly that. It's the Goku shows them the way to wisdom and nourishment,
It's
right?
like here's water as such,
Yes.
right? There's the concept of the lake. The wandering lake is the concept. It's the idea, and so Goku's solving the idea
But
for
like I
them.
was saying, what do
Yeah.
you think about that having Nam already done what they do in this episode be the reason why it can't solve the problem? The let's say finite aspect of the rewards brought back after confronting a dragon. Is this all just this?
I think it's just the cyclical nature of, how would I say, nobody can win a fight
Oh yeah.
with the same move twice, right? Like they can't in in the progression of how people power up in the story or whatever. And it's the same reason that like someone can't beat Goku, let's say, with the same move twice. Namu's trying to attack this problem with the same move twice. He's trying to stay on the same level. He's not trying to reach a higher level of enlightenment. And that's why I have the dichotomy between his earthly solution, which is all is dust at the end of the day, because he's not he wasn't able to do what Goku was able to do, right? He didn't find the wandering lake. He found one source,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't find the lake as such. And that's a very Buddhist idea, right? Going out and finding the idea, and being able to contain it, right? Having the wandering lake, bringing the wisdom back into society. It's like, it's a different level of being.
Yeah, and of course here too, it's sparkling and it's shining, right? It represents that enlightenment, and so
Hmm.
Goku's able to show them the way to it, and then they're able to nourish themselves, and that's really that conflict solved, and we see Bulma and the gang get back to the tournament.
They just arrived
And
back where they started.
why is that? We were just saying.
They haven't changed their modes of being at all.
Right, it's the same as well, right? It's
Hmm.
like this attack from heaven against the dragon.
Yeah,
You know,
or abusing an aspect of yourself, trying to constrict.
enslave an aspect
Yeah,
of yourself, really. Yeah,
yeah, trying to just control your to dominate your will, right? Or to
yeah,
use your will to dominate an aspect of yourself instead of integrating it.
it's gonna lead you back into the desert. You
And
still got to
then,
integrate before you can get out of it.
mhm,
And so that's what happens, and they get back to the tournament. And so at the end of the episode, we kind of see like that microcosm, what Goku can do now, how far Goku's come, right? How he can hoist the suffering of Nam's people on his shoulders and lead them to wisdom and enlightenment, nourishment, all that. And we also see how the juxtaposition of Blooma's mode of being, because Blooma's really the main character of that crew, right? How hers has led them back into the desert, and she has to reintegrate again until she can get back to the city in her version of enlightenment.
yeah, and that's to say that the path to enlightenment is just paved with failure. It's no one, until they're the Buddha, achieves true enlightenment. We're constantly failing to see the truth, and we just struggle towards it. And sometimes you have to be reminded, like, you can't just keep trying the same thing to
But
find that truth.
it's a personal process,
Hmm.
right? And so you can get better at it. And Goku gets better at it.
Yeah,
We don't know the upper limits of it. And that's kind of something Dragon Ball explores. So I think that's pretty much the episode. I think we did a good job encapsulating it pretty succinctly.
yeah.
It
So
wasn't
it's
very it's
it's
not
funny because we kind of did explain that it somewhat is a filler episode, right? This episode reestablishes the power levels and sets the characters sort of back where they need to be, and it's kind of proving a point for multiple characters that you can't You can't repeat your methods, even though you've watched the domination of a hierarchy. That's not you, right? Even though you watch somebody become the best, you don't get to just identify with them and then be the best and go out there and find that wisdom. You still have to go walk that path yourself.
And even, let's say, a reverential spirit that has a righteous purpose is not enough to bring wisdom and nourishment to a community.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be that confrontation with truth to that chaotic nature. And that's what we see. And from Goku's motive being, that's how he's able to find the lake for them
On the way.
on the way. And this was Get the Mic, episode 29. If you liked what you heard, please hit that like button. Subscribe. Leave us a comment. If you agreed, if you disagreed, maybe you disagreed with us this time. We'd love to hear it down in the comments. You can always get in the chat. I believe next episode is going to be pre-recorded, but we'll just have to see.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty much it. So I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
Good night.